countdown to the last comic shop in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Previously on the last thrilling chapter of Young Romance.
Drink up, baby. Have another.
The drinks made me choke, but I didn't mean to act like a child. All this time, through the corner of my eye, I could see Stanley Budco's sullen frown directed at us. That made me mad.
Come on, Tony. I'll show you how to win at this gambling. This is real fun.
I'm a little dizzy. It's the smoke in here. I was getting pretty woozy when the commotion started. The club was being raided.
The cops! It's a raid! I can't afford to get mixed up in a thing like this. Let go of me, Tony!
Bob, don't leave me. I'm frightened.
Aren't you forgetting something, Scott?
Get that hand off of me, Budco. Let that little tramp shift for herself. She's just a pickup.
You're a dirty heel, Scott.
Bob had called me a pickup. My world was tumbling down upon me when Stanley Budco gathered me in his arms.
Keep a grip on yourself, kid. I'll get you out of this, I hope.
Hey there, stay where you are.
Uh-oh, trouble.
What?
Sorry, copper, but I can't stop to explain.
It was all like a nightmare. I remember driving away with Stanley with the fresh air clearing my dazed senses. I heard what Bob called me.
Aren't you gonna cry, kid?
I'm too ashamed.
Good. I can't stand tears. Where do you live, kid?
When he brought me home, Granny was waiting up.
I knew you'd wind up like this. You're just like your mother. You're no good, Tony.
Don't blame the kid, lady. It wasn't her fault.
Ah, so this is your mysterious boyfriend, a gangster. No wonder you never brought him home. You get off this property, you hoodlum.
Yeah, okay, lady. So long, kid. Don't let him get you down.
Get out! Get out!
Is Tony nothing more than just a pickup? Will Stanley win her pickup heart? Find out more in the next 3 pages of Young Romance, designed for the more adult readers of comics.
Hey, welcome back to the Valentine's Day edition of The Last Comic Shop. I hope you enjoyed that reading from the classic Golden Age story, I Was a Pickup, from the Young Romance comic series done by the legendary Jack Kirby and Joe Simon. I'm the host with the most, Danny Larson, joined by Chad Smith and Jay Scott as always, as well as my wonderful wife Nicole for another read pile.
Whoa, wait, hold on. I didn't say anything about a read pile. I came to the shop to help you out with that Young Romance thing. I didn't say anything about a book review. I mean, it's Valentine's Day and I'm your wife of 15 years. Pony up with the romantic date, buddy.
Well, and that's why I thought that we'd read Asterios Polyp by David Mazzucchelli. You love that book. And besides, look, I got a charcuterie board and I got a wonderful Riesling.
No. A decent cheese plate and a bottle of booze while we hang out with your cronies in a comic shop is not my idea of romance. No offense, guys.
None taken, Chadrick. You must simply try this smoked Gouda. Oh, it is delightful.
Indeed, Mr. Scott. Nothing says sophistication more than watercress and summer sausage.
See, they're already eating most of the tray anyway. Look, do your show, and I'll be back in an hour. And if you don't come up with those John Mayer concert tickets, I know a certain host with the most that'll be spending the night on the comic shop floor.
But what about the book?
Will Andy be sleeping on the couch this Valentine's Day? Will the Asterios Polyp review be condemned to our next clip show?
Oh, knock it off. That's not helping. We're in a real pickle here, guys.
A charcuterie board, pickle.
Delightful.
Serious. I was hoping to have a fourth on this week's show just to help shed some light on this fantastic but often overlooked classic in Asterios Polyp. But where are we going to find another person to help us review this on such short notice?
Hey guys,
Hey, George from Shortbox Summary.
Hey, Andy, I saw your wife was leaving just as I was coming in. Wait, when did you guys start serving fancy cheese to your customers? This looks nice. Was that little pile of Havarti? Got some good chèvre going on there?
We were going to review this week's book with my wife, so I thought I'd get a cheese plate. I didn't want to serve her just the 30-year-old gum that comes in the Rocketeer trading card packs, but I don't know. She wants me to take her to John Mayer now. Regardless, we had to do this review, and I'm glad you're here, George. Did you happen to read that Asterios Polyp book that we recommended you a couple weeks ago when you were at the shop?
I sure did, and am I glad you did?
Oh, wow. Would you like to stay and do the show with us this week? Like, we kind of need a fourth, and if you've read it, like...
And we've got lots of cheese.
Oh, my God, yeah, comics and camembert? Let's do this, yeah.
Just open the windows, please, guys.
Well, in any case, before we begin, George, why don't you tell all of our listeners about your show real quick, Shortbox Summary, as I mentioned, and what you like to do there. I think this kind of fits because this particular book, I think, was released in 2009, and that's kind of your wheelhouse, or what you like to do on Shortbox?
Yeah. So Shortbox Summary is a comic book podcast where I go back and take a look at the books I was reading in high school and college, and I figure out if they were good or if I was in high school and college. And so I re-examine them with some cultural context. I talk about the movies, the TV shows, the songs that were coming out, just trying to give listeners a broader picture of the circumstances in which we found ourselves reading these books.
Well, with your encyclopedic knowledge, do you happen to know what was released and all that stuff around Asterios Polyp?
I do, yeah. So this book came out July 7th, 2009. I was going to the movies. Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince.
Okay.
Saw that.
Ice Age, Dawn of the Dinosaurs.
Saw that on TV.
Transformers, Revenge of the Fallen. Still pretty mad about that one.
Was that 2 or 3?
That was 2. That was the product of the writer's strike.
Oh, with the wrecking balls.
With the wrecking
Yes.
balls, yeah.
Yeah, no, I hated that.
That wasn't the one with Anthony Hopkins, was it?
No, I
No,
believe
there
that
was
the
one
third.
with
That
Anthony
was Dark of the
Hopkins.
Moon, I believe. That was the
Yeah,
third one.
they just pulled up a truckload of money and just dumped it on his front porch. And he was like, sure, I'll be in a Transformers movie.
he's like, yeah, this is no The Edge or Meet Joe Black, but I guess I'll do it. Number 4 is Public Enemies, a movie I'm very sad to say is not particularly good because I love the director, Michael Mann. Did Heat and
Is that
Last of
Johnny
the
Depp
Mohicans.
as a gangster?
It was, and I believe Marion Cotillard also.
Ooh, she's
Yes.
A little bit of a bummer.
Is that the John Dillinger? She's John Dillinger in that, right?
I
Isn't it?
believe so. I only saw it once, and I'll be honest, I fell asleep. I was one of those, like, as soon as it hit Blu-ray, I'm like, I'm there, and then I wasn't there for very long.
I'm there for snoring.
I thought you were there too long.
And number 5, The Proposal, the Ryan Reynolds, Sandra Bullock rom-com.
Oh,
Where they go to Alaska or something, and
Yeah.
Oh, look at J.A. busting out the rom-com knowledge.
I think is Betty White in that one? Betty
She
White's,
is.
Yeah, Betty
She
White's
is.
in that one. I saw that one. I saw that one and the first one, whatever the first one you mentioned was. So
That's fair. The number 1 song for July 4th, the week before, was Boom Boom Pow by Black Eyed Peas.
oh, that's a decent
With
one.
Fergie?
Yes, and number 2 was I Got a Feeling by Black Eyed Peas.
Also with Fergie?
This is where I get a little sketchy with the music once we get into like 2009 because I had a car that had like a MP3 cable, like an audio jack. So I was just listening to my iPod Classic. I didn't listen to the radio for like 4 years until I moved to Los Angeles. And I was so sick of my own music. I was like, I gotta listen to literally anything else.
That's right. iPods were the best. It's like you can carry around thousands of songs, but listen to the same 10 over
That's
and over.
exactly right. Yeah. A lot of Third Eye Blind. I was a Third Eye Blind kid.
Yeah, no judgment, no judgment.
No judgment at all. We all like that stuff. I liked it.
You guys want to hear about the comics that we're selling when
I
this book
do.
came out?
Given we're a comic book podcast, that would be
and
6.
Asterios Polyp was not selling, so let's see what
Oh my
was
God,
selling.
it's such a bummer, man. All right, I've got some numbers that are going to astound you. So just for what was coming out comics-wise around this time, the number 1 selling single issue of the month of July 2009, Captain America Reborn number 1, Ed Brubaker and Brian Hitch, I believe, doing that book. It was like a little mini-series that tied into the Ed Brubaker long-running Cap era.
Right, where Cap had been dead, but turns out he was just shot through time or whatever.
Yeah.
Carter.
Yeah, whatever also happened to Batman at a similar time. Yeah, exactly.
Yes, yeah, Return of Bruce Wayne, which I bought because it had Batman on the cover dressed up like a caveman. I was just like, I gotta buy this. And then I read it and I was just like, I don't understand any of this.
I thought you were looking for the pirate Batman and those Buccaneer bat boots.
Nothing makes me feel dumber than a Grant Morrison comic. I just feel so stupid. I'm like, I have a high school degree. I have a college degree. I studied like English literature. I should be better at this.
Right. Yeah, I bought that 1 million in omnibus format. It's just holding up a door now.
And I don't think you can make sense of Enter Arc.
That Captain America book sold 193,000 copies. I get all these numbers from Comicron, which is a great analytics website for comic sales, run by John Jackson Miller, who's written quite a few comics. He shepherded a lot of Star Wars comics from Dark Horse and did some Marvel in the early 2000s. Number 2 selling book, Blackest Night, number 1, 176,000 copies.
Yeah, that was...
Oh, man. Green Lantern, where the biggest thing to happen in the last 50 years has been Roy fighting Biv with G in the middle.
It's not wrong.
What was number 3, George?
Number 3 was Batman and Robin by Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely. That sold 117,000
I still
copies.
need to read that.
That was also good, though. That was Dick Grayson was Batman at the time.
Yeah,
An image that's been shared a lot recently, thanks to James Gunn talking about future DC movie plans.
It's a secret shame of mine that I haven't gotten around to reading that, but I've wanted to. It's been on. I put it on the top of my read pile several times, and then something ends up getting put on top.
So if Dick Grayson was Batman, who was Robin?
Damian
Wayne. Ah.
This is right after Bruce Wayne had been shot through time by Darkseid.
Shot through the time!
Yeah, which was different when Captain America was shot through the time.
Totally.
Both of them playing Billy Pilgrim there. They become unstucks in the times.
The rest of the top 10, it's all DC and Marvel in the top 10. It got Amazing Spider-Man 600, Incredible Hulk 600, Captain America 601, Green Lantern 43 and 44, because those were tie-ins to Blackest Night. And then closing out the number 10, which has shocked me, Ultimatum number 5.
Sure.
Did the wave hit? The wave had hit.
The wave had hit at that point.
Had Blob eaten all the people?
I think Blob had eaten Wasp. I think someone was about to break someone else's neck because of what they did.
Oh, man. Look at you holding back the spoilers for a story from 20 years ago.
I was so mad. Oh, it's just like, it's drawn by David Finch and written by Jeff Loeb. I like both those people. They're pretty good at their jobs. Let's check this book out. Didn't love it.
Right.
And I got some more numbers for you. So everything was DC and Marvel until 31 on the single issues. Then it was Buffy the Vampire Slayer number 26. That sold 55,000. And then I just wrote down some other titles just because I like some of these books. This is when Wednesday Comics debuted.
Okay.
Oh, that's great.
This was War of the Kings was going on. Gotham City Sirens just hit issue number 2, which was the Paul Dini Guillaume March, where it was like all about Harley and Poison Ivy and I believe Catwoman, but it was just focusing on like the bigger women of the Bat family.
I have not read that. I'll have to check that one out.
And just some more numbers, just because these things are like popular now. Boys, issue 32, hit 25K. That was the number 78 selling book. Star Wars Invasion, a mini event that I actually like quite a bit, starring the Yuuzhan Vong. I'm a huge Star Wars nerd. That was book number 80 with 24K. Angel was number 84, 24K. Boys, Herogasm 3, 22K. Look at that. Those are like pretty much the only indie book seems disingenuous, but the only like non-Marvel and DC books to crack the top 100. Wow. So this was a summer dominated by the big two.
Yes, and Asterios Polyp didn't even chart.
Asterios Polyp charted on the graphic novel sales.
Okay.
To be fair, graphic novels didn't sell a whole lot at this time. I think Boys Volume 4 was like the number 1 selling graphic novel this month with like 20,000 copies, 22,000 copies, something like that. Asterios Polyp was the number 72 selling graphic novel of July 2009. And that I wrote down the exact number. I didn't round it. It was 1,467 copies.
Jeez.
Now, do you reckon that that's just down to distribution? issues?
No, it shouldn't be, because this was published by Random House, which was like an actual big like publisher that had access. Like, this should have been in airports, this should have been in bookstores. This should have been at the end of the shelf, like at
right. You would have thought
Barnes
that
and
you
Noble.
walk into like a Barnes and Noble and there's a stand there with new books.
Trust me, I read this in a Barnes and Noble. It was there.
Oh.
So
it could have been 1468, but someone just had to read it in the store. Chad,
That's right. Hey, I'm very poor.
Well, in any case, we're going to get to our review of Asterios Polyp right after these commercial breaks. Thanks you so much for all those factoids and statistics, George.
Yeah.
Make sure that you're always checking out Shortbox Summary so you can get those statistics every single week. So he does that awesome work on his show. Here is Asterios Polyp right after these messages.
Hey, it's Mikey Wood, frequent Last Comic Shop guest and collector. And as a collector, I'm always in need of boards, bags, long boxes, and more to house all those comics. That's why I use promo code LCSPOD to get 10% off my orders at bcwsupplies.com. Not only does it get me a discount on BCW's already low prices, but I know using LCSPOD at checkout is another way I can show my support to the Last Comic Shop podcast in their continuing mission to bring fans together under that big comic book tent. So if you're in need of comic book supplies, head out to bcwsupplies.com and use promo code LCSPOD today. That's LCSPOD.
Cartoon Dumpster Dive.
I'm your host, Joel.
And I'm your host, Andrew. Join us as we travel back in time to watch the garbage cartoons from your past. Will you remember them? Maybe.
We painstakingly watch every episode of these cartoons to remind you that, hey, some things belong in the past.
Our pain is your entertainment. Thanks for tuning in.
All right, we're back with more of the Last Comic Shop, and it is now time for the Read Pile Review. Yes, that time of every single show, instead of getting dates, we're going to stay at a comic book shop and talk about a comic book. So, I got a date later on. You heard my wife. Like, if I don't come up with something, it's curtains.
I'm hanging out with Chad and Jay over a charcuterie board. If this isn't a date, I don't know what is.
We love the cheese.
In any case, we're reviewing Asterios Polyp on this week's show, and it's a book that I've wanted to cover on the Last Comic Shop for some time, just simply because, to George's point on the previous segment, I don't think a lot of people know about this book, and that's a real shame, because it's real good. In any case, Chad, who wrote and drew Asterios Polyp?
Okay, so this was written and drawn by David Mazzucchelli, who you might know from The Best of Batman and Batman Year One, or The Best of Daredevil and Daredevil Born Again, or the fact that this book won the Los Angeles Times Book Prize in 2009, or won the Eisner Award for Best Graphic Album in 2010, won the Harvey Award for Best Graphic Album, Best Single Issue or Story, Best Letterer. Oh, I should mention, Mazzucchelli took the Best Writer, Artist, and Best Lettering for Asterios Polyp. It's won a number of other awards, and Mazzucchelli himself, because he's so good at this thing, currently an Eisner Hall of Fame member.
Yeah, just last year, he was inducted into the Hall of Fame, and with, again, work like this and Born Again and Year One, just those three books alone, I think that's...
Bill and Ted's Excellent Comic, number 2.
Yes. Any case, J.A., what's the 10-cent synopsis?
So the title character is Asterios Polyp, and he's a professor of architecture at I think it's Cornell in upstate New York, and lightning strikes his apartment building and burns it down, burning everything there. He escapes the apartment, he gets on a Greyhound bus and goes out into the world, the farthest place that his money will take him on this Greyhound bus. And essentially then the novel tells the story of his life in this town, and I think it's in Arizona, where he becomes a car mechanic. But at the same time, you get all these flashbacks to his life growing up and becoming a Cornell professor and meeting his wife. It's a loosely based off the Odyssey, and it kind of deals with the idea of duality and, how do we become who we are, destiny versus free will. And there's lots of other things that we're going to unpack. But essentially, he's sort of going through, how does he deal with who he is to become a better person, I guess, in the end.
Yes. I mean, somebody commented there like, why are you reading that on Valentine's Day? And I was just like, dude, the whole book's about romance. Like, it's about a love affair. It's a love affair between him and his wife. You learn his wife, Hannah, and how they met each other and their relationship. That relationship came to an end and how it kind of crushed him and how he became a better person by losing an eye and, like Odin, gaining wisdom. This book is incredibly deep. And we're going to kick it over to George, because this is the first time that he's read the book. And I think you're gushing about this, right, George?
This is going to be like the new gift I give people like for Christmas. Like when I don't know what to get someone and like I know they have like a faint interest in comics. They're like, oh, like you follow comics. Like, oh, that's quaint. That's adorable. What should I read? Like, I think this is going to be the new like stocking stuffer, like default gift. Like I thought this story was beautiful. And I'm like a little disappointed I didn't hear about it sooner. Chad, you mentioned all the awards and like the hardware that David Mazzucchelli took home because of this. Sometimes awards are wrong. Like I'm still mad that like the artist won Best Picture. Like that doesn't make sense to me, or like, oh, Martin Scorsese won for The Departed, but not Raging Bull or Goodfellas. Like, sure, okay, that doesn't make sense at all. But I guess you're still an authority. It makes perfect sense that it won every award. This is a beautiful story. And like David Mazzucchelli, like you said at the top, you hear that name, you immediately think of Year One. You think of Born Again. Reading this book is like finding out like, wait, this guy has like a whole other pitch that I just wasn't aware of. It's like someone who's just like, oh, he has a nasty slider and like that's all he does. That's how he strikes people out for years. Then all of a sudden finding out like, wait, when did he learn how to throw a curveball? Like when did this happen? I could have had 1,000 years to guess who drew this book. I don't think I would have ever guessed David Mazzucchelli. It's a complete mastery of art just for him to throw out his established style and do something so distinct and beautiful and cohesive and clear. Like this, I'm stunned by this book.
Oh yeah, and this is just your first time through. This is one of those books that the more you read it, the more you're going to pick up and the more you're going to notice. And you hit the nail on the head. It's definitely a master's class in comic bookery. For reasons we'll talk about, I'm sure, as the show goes on. But
yeah, I mean, not to tee it up, but the reason I found out about the book is because of Chad and this story that he tells oftentimes about how this book changed your viewpoint on how you view the world, right?
Yeah. So, and the too much personal information about me, I'm a school teacher, which is awesome because every year I get a chance to try to influence the future. And I get a whole bunch of new kids to learn and work with. And this is one of those books. It changed the way that I see things. And you can't say that every day about a Batman book or whatever. But there's a passage in here where it talks about, what if reality is just an extension of yourself? And wouldn't the way that people are, color how that person experiences the world? And then it proceeds to show Asterios Polyp as like this teacher who's trying to influence other people. And he's drawn in a way that, in my mind, is how to draw comics the Marvel way, where he's broken down into the basic shapes of the human body. You can see the cylinders, you can see the squares, you can see where his belt is and all that other stuff. And every student is composed of different shapes. Like some of them are, like Asterios. Some of them are made of letters, and some of them are made of black globs, and some of them are made of little ooey gooey art things, and some kids are made of little swirls. But all these people have all these different designs to them, and that's how they shape the world. And then Mazzucchelli will do that throughout the book, where different people, based on how they perceive the world, that's how they're drawn. And we talk about this love story. You have Asterios, who's this guy. He's made out of these basic shapes, and then his eventual wife is made out of a totally different section. He's the blue lines, and she's like the red lines that fill in and give weight and give mass to things. And as they fall in love, those shapes come together, and you see the outlines of the people along with the weight and the mass, and it becomes that Greek ideal of the people coming together. And oh my goodness, if that's not a beautiful way to express love in comic books, I don't know what is.
And when that's happening in the book, it's all during that discussion about him recording. He has all these video cameras in his house, and he's explaining why, that his brother died at birth, so he feels like the videos are sort of like his brother watching over him, and it's like a video doppelganger. And then the wife freaks out, but then she's like, "Oh, it's kind of like the Egyptian tombs or the Chinese emperor, where it's a shadow of the living world." And as she's saying that, they become whole. They go from being red and blue, which is, by the way, what you use when you're doing that old style 3D.
Right? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And then it becomes whole, as Chad said.
And then as they fall out of love in their arguments, they separate back into their original shapes. And that is so heartbreaking. This thing that was wanted, it separates out, and then he goes back to his cylinders.
There's so many little nuggets of goodness in regards to the relationship between people. There's a comment at some point that if you really think about, Adam and Eve and how Eve was made from Adam's rib, that means that she's basically a twin or a clone because she shares the same DNA, that they're not, because they were basically one person. And I don't know, there's so many of those little things in this book that make you think.
When you break down a book like this, we tend to go to the story a lot, but the art is quite striking, and the coloring. I love the coloring because it's quite subdued. It's just, lots of blues and purples, and a lot of stuff is left uncolored. Faces are left uncolored. The two people standing against a white background, there's no sense that he felt like he needed to fill in where they were taking place. You don't see a lot of environments. Good use of negative space and silhouettes. I thought that was interesting that he used a lot of silhouettes. Instead of drawing the people out, you would just see, a page or two of silhouettes talking to each other.
They talk a lot about duality. That's a huge theme of the book, right? Just the two sides. And I'm sorry for bringing up a movie and a comic book podcast, but have you ever seen Bull Durham? When you're younger, that's like a baseball movie, right? And then the older you get, you realize oh no, baseball is literally just an excuse to talk about everything else. It's about that. It's about a person just trying to reconnect, find the thing that made them happy and whole, and get that back and learn about themselves. But every page, especially Ursula is one of my favorite characters.
Yeah.
Right. The wife of the mechanic. Every page was just dripping with so much wisdom. I'm 32, I'm not pretending I've seen everything and understand everything, but I was on the edge of my seat anytime she was on panel. And I know for a fact if I were to meet that person in real life, I would not like them whatsoever. But something about the way David Mazzucchelli drew her was just brimming with confidence and brimming with self-assuredness. And it was just oh, this is a voice I don't have in my real life, so I'm going to double down and listen here.
Right. No, she comes across really, the way that Dave Mazzucchelli draws her in this book. It's almost like that quintessential kind of Earth Mother. She's ample of bosom, I don't know, that she could give birth to the universe. And as a result of that, you kind of, when she starts talking about, oh, I've lived previous lives and, we're out of touch with certain things, and that she guesses that Asterios had been married before and that's what he's running from. I think everything in this book is done very, very much on purpose, which is wonderful. From the designs of all the characters, from some of the particular pieces that they talk about. Again, there's a comment at the end where he drives back to find his lost love, and he could have any car in the world, but he wants the car that runs on sunlight. That's going to lead his way back to where he's supposed to be in his life, and it can't be any other way for him. And I think it's striking. But the other thing that's interesting about this is the randomness. It is true to life, but his quest starts because lightning strikes his house, the gods bringing down, and I think he even talks about that, about how the ancients used to make all their gods people because then people could just be supporting characters in the gods' plays.
That imagery is mimicked later in the story too, because Hannah is working on that play Orpheus, and the story of Orpheus is about a musician who goes down to hell to find the love of his life who passed away, and Hades is you know what, your love is so cool, I'm going to let you do this, but here's the deal, you have to walk all the way back up to Earth And if you look back once, like none of this flies. Like she's just going to come back here. We see that story like play out again during his divorce papers, right? Like when he gets handed those, which were also like bestowed down by the gods, right? Like the same way the lightning bolt at the beginning was, like that started the fire. And then he's not looking at the bar when he's seeing the Radniks, right? Is that the band that's playing?
Yeah.
He's not looking, and then he gets called the homophobic slur repeatedly. Not looking. Then he looks, and then that's when he gets glassed by that guy.
Yeah.
And so just all these.
Wow.
All these
you know what?
layers.
That's the first time I realized that, George, is that it's a play on the Orpheus, that he looks. It's not until he turns around that, like, the back, like if he had kept on looking forward, that probably wouldn't have happened to him. But as I said, like, he gains a lot of wisdom in losing that. That's the moment that pushes him to say, like, I'm done. Like, my quest here is finished. I am now ready to go back to Hannah and all the stuff that he learns. My favorite part of his time in Arizona is actually when he builds the treehouse, because it's the first time when he actually built one of his designs, and it wasn't really even his. It was his buddies.
Right. Yeah, but and because that's a big plot point. He's an architect, but he just teaches it. He never actually. None of his designs are ever built. He wins all these awards for something that's and in the air, but there's nothing solid about it. And finally, he helps his friend build something solid, and he's. Instead of it just existing in his mind or existing on paper, it's actually existing in reality. It's being built in reality, which leads me to, I still think there's this idea that there's sort of this amoral whim of the gods type thing, going back to the Odyssey and Homer. It starts out essentially with a lightning bolt. My question, because I don't want to give it away, but the ending, what was your reaction to the ending? Because I laughed. It made me laugh, and it like a good hearty, oh, that is so good. That is so perfectly perfect. And then it got even better when the kid looks in the sky, after that fact. I was like, yes. Maybe that's just me, and I like those.
I'm of the opinion that it's like the Sam and Diane thing, right? Like, once they get together and you have the resolution of that relationship, you don't really care what happens next. You don't really care what happens to Asterios and Hannah, whether they live happily ever after or not. You just wanted to see them reconcile, and they sit there quietly and they don't say anything, and they just say, this is nice. And that's the end of their story. Like, that was, they came back together. They had that intertwining of dialogue. Oh, the word bubbles that are
beautiful.
Like,
Oh my God. One of my favorite pages, especially like seeing them. Cause like when they were telling some story before, right? He had like straight edged words and she had rounded words that would make sense thematically based on a different conversation they had, but that's beside the point. But it's just like, it was so awkward to read because it was just like different lettering types and different like bubbling types. And the conversation was so start and go, and it just like I could feel like secondhand awkwardness like from them trying to stumble through the story together. And then the fact that like their story just became one as they were both like finishing each other's sentences and continuing the story in perfect cadence. Oh, it's just beautiful, man. It was just so good.
Yeah, like that bubble at the very end where it's like it has the square border, it has the rounded border, they're both talking at the same time and everything's in harmony. Oh my goodness.
You're right. But then after that happens, like, who cares? Like, that's the end of the story. So good. I don't need to have to worry about anything else.
They had their moment.
I disagree. Like, I think it plays into like the randomness of everything, and it's actually not that random because it was like inadvertently referenced earlier in the story.
The seer.
But like, I also feel like we already cathartically got that moment when he was glassed.
Oh.
Like, I feel like that was the thing that happened at the end. But it had already happened. I know spoilers, but I don't want to give away the whole thing because, like you said, not a lot of people have read this book.
Right, that's true.
It's
very true.
Like,
yeah, more people can't live in the duality when he only has the one eye.
Oh, damn it! Damn it! I didn't even think about that, Chad.
Any case, well, we hope that you stick around for our ratings right after these commercial breaks. So stay tuned.
Greetings, henchmen and loyal subjects. I am Evan the Great.
And I'm JVD. We're your hosts of the Fictional Battle Podcast, Crossover Collision, brought to you by the Villains Demand.
If you love hearing in-depth breakdowns of your favorite characters and what they are capable of doing while fighting in random battlegrounds against other fan favorites, then this is the podcast for you.
New episodes drop every Friday wherever you listen to your favorite podcast or over on thebuildsman.com.
What if you could live with your favorite fictional characters and have a place to connect with the best nerdy neighbors and creators out there? Join us on your friendly neighborhood comic show. Every week, we keep hope, give help, and share comics with all. With games, interviews, and more, this isn't your average talk show. It's a living neighborhood. We are honored to be your CBC Comic Book Community Award-nominated nerdy neighborhood. So what are you waiting for? Come join the fun and join the neighborhood. It's your friendly neighborhood comic show every Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern on YouTube.
All right, we're back with more of The Last Comic Shop, and it is now time for our ratings. Yes, where we try to pair up a number value with a book that, I'll be honest, shouldn't really be rated because it's so good.
That's what we do.
That's what we do. And boy, this year has been it's been a treasure trove of good books.
This is my year.
This
is my
This
year.
is the year of Chad. Not the summer of George, the year of Chad.
Yeah, sorry, George. This is my year, buddy.
It's only February. I'll see you again in July. It's gonna be fine.
Okay. But in case, 1 out of 4 scale, Jay, what is it for this week?
So this book, it's a loose play off of Homer's The Odyssey. So we're talking about whims of the gods. So 1 out of 4 whims. Have fun with that one.
Yeah, whims.
Whim.
Do you say cool whims? Cool.
Whimsy.
Why are you putting the emphasis on the W? Any case, J.A., why don't you go first? What did you think of this book? I've been wanting you to read this for a long time. Did you like it?
I think any book that has the protagonist driving around in a Saab SPG is going to be for me. That was my car when I was in college and out in the world before I moved abroad. And David Mazzucchelli obviously drove a Saab at some point too, because there's no other reason to put a Saab. I mean, you could just have any car, but it's definitely a Saab SPG, not just any Saab either. So yeah, it's a 4 out of 4. It's great. It's nuanced. It deals with the ideas of who you are and what makes you who you are. As we've all said, and I think you've gotten to the sense of as we've been talking, it's something that you can reread and peel another layer into. So every time you're reading it, you're pulling something else out or you're seeing something else. It's a great book, I think, to George's point, to gift to somebody who is maybe interested in comics a bit, but they don't know what they like. It would be a great book to have on a book club because the discussions that you could pull out of this are incredible. So 4 out of 4 whims.
All right. George, what's your rating?
I'm a huge fan of the show The West Wing, and there's one episode where Jed Bartlett, the president, is so pissed that he has to go see some musician. He's just like, oh God, like what does this person have to offer me? And then he comes back and there's like one scene where he's smoking a cigarette because that was Jed's like secret thing. And he has this line where he's just like, I honestly didn't know I could still be surprised by music. And so this book, like it felt like I was 12 years old and like seeing like a Wes Anderson movie for the first time. Like I just didn't know it could be done like this, you know, like this was, I don't want to say a transformational experience for me, but if it wasn't, then it's the closest it could have been. This book is fantastic. It is 4 out of 4 whims.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with that. It's definitely a 4 out of 4. I honestly think this is required reading for anybody that either doesn't like comic books or likes comic books. It's just a good book. And Dave Mazzucchelli hits it out of the park with just the visuals, the language, the design of this book. Chad, I mean, you know, there's even design around the front cover, right?
Heck yeah. I was doing the research on Wikipedia. I saw a quote where they were talking about the cover of the book, and in the hardback, they have the little dust jacket, but the dust jacket is designed not to fit the book itself, to reveal the forms underneath of the book. And they asked Mazzucchelli why he did it. He's like, "This is the most obnoxious thing I could think of."
It's great. It's
great.
Yeah, there's so many things I could gush until the cows come home about how everybody should read Asterios Polyp. But you heard, George on this show. I mean, I recommended George read this, and you saw the effect. So yeah, it's a 4 out of 4. Go read it. Recommend it to other people. Chad?
Yeah. So as I said, this is my year. I'm claiming this one too. For a couple of reasons. First and foremost, the people that know me know I'm an incredible dink. Just really obnoxious sometimes, and I can personally relate to Asterios Polyp and the way that he views the world in these black and white terms, and sometimes I get lost in ideas like that, or like when he's talking about the essence of a shoe. Like, that's me. I'm the guy that's out there looking for the shoe that represents the essence of shoe. And there's the scene where he and his wife are driving past, and a car had just hit a deer, and Asterios is looking at the car and the car crash, and his wife is looking at the deer, and they're both having two simultaneously different reactions to the same moment. Their perception of that moment is, you see it on the page. For me, like, it's one of the things I love about my wife. Like, as much as I'm a pretentious dink, my wife is someone who's so empathetic. And it's the thing I love the most about her. She's the one that's focused on the deer and the harm to the animal and what's that empathetic side of things, when I'm like, oh, that's going to be a costly repair for that automobile and blah, 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 blah. Like, I talked about earlier those pages that changed my viewpoint. As a teacher, like, when I come in a brand new school year and I'm introduced to this brand new crop of kids every year. But since I've read this book, I see the kids differently. You can see the kids that are the wavy line kids. You can see the kids that are the harsh angles. You can see the kids being constructed of all these different forms. And that's not something I had a language for before this book. And Mazzucchelli is just such a master. Whether it is, the printing techniques, and he's using a lot of yellows and cyans and magentas, and those are like your primary printing ink colors, and he's blending them in, and he's pulling them out, blending them in again. There's just so much in here that, I've read this again and again, whether it was the first time in Barnes & Noble years and years and years ago, or whether it was on our old show when I recommended this for your wife, Nicole, to read.
Yes.
Or whether it was here, and I read it over break right before I had my big accident in my house where, instead of lightning strikes, it was a pipe bursting and all my possessions are flooded and I'm destroyed. And I'm wandering around with my little Swiss Army knife and not much else. Oh, my God. This book speaks to me so much, and I love it. And, for whims.
Oh, boy. Real quickly, Chad, if you're ranking this and Mr. Miracle.
No, you don't do that. You don't do that.
In the year of Chad never has to choose.
I still say, by the end of this year, we've got so many 4s, we're going to have to rank the 4s. We're going to have to come on the show and rank the 4s. Definitive, plant the flag as to what was a 4 that was slightly better than another 4.
I can't pick, but they're all things that speak to me. They're all things that belong in the year of Chad.
Okay. Well, one thing that we hope is also in the year of Chad is some great recommendations. Yeah, some other books that you can pick up at your local comic book shop in addition to Asterios Polyp. Now, I will say that if you go to a comic book shop and they have copies of Asterios Polyp there, that is a cool comic book shop. You get your pull pile there, because that's a place that knows good stuff.
And as George alluded to, this was not a huge seller. And so this is something, if you're going to find it on that secondary market, if you see it, you pick it up, because it doesn't come around a lot. And it's something that definitely deserves to be in your collection. If you are an artsy-fartsy English major, or if you are somebody that loves comic books, or if you are just somebody who enjoys good stuff, make sure if you see a copy, you don't sleep on it.
All right.
Yeah, but just to that point, because it's put out by an actual book publisher, Pantheon Books, through Random House. Yeah, they do put out new printing. It's on its 6th printing already, and it has now sold over 40,000 copies. So it's starting to get out there after the initial slow uptake. So
I don't know. 40,000 is still a low number. That's like
it's not huge,
X-Force 37.
But again, if you can't find it in your comic book shop, you might be able to find it in your local bookstore or on the Amazon.
There you go. Well, what's another book that they can pick up, J.A.?
So, seeing that it is the Valentine season, I am going to recommend something I haven't read yet, but just the names and the little blurb alone makes me want to read it.
So much of romance is about the mystery, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yes, yes. Actually, there's this great quote I saw about somebody with a library full of unread books. He said, "A library full of unread books is potential. A library full of all books that have been read is depressing."
Oh.
Because
so what's this book?
Okay, Matt Fraction, Chip Zdarsky, Sex Criminals. So this is essentially, yes, John and Susie have struggled with a strange superpower. When they orgasm, it stops time. So when they sleep together, they learn that they can share this time bubble, and then they immediately start using this power to rob banks and prank evil corporations, but they've got to look out for the sex police.
Yes.
That's the write-up. It just sounds bonkers crazy and fun.
You're absolutely correct. This is one of the best books. It's in my top 10 over the last at least 10 years. Is it
going to make the year of Chad?
I don't know. We might have to end up reading Sex Criminals just because Chad loves that book too. He's the one that introduced it to me. Not only, if you're going to read Sex Criminals, you also have to make sure that you pick out its companion book. Just the tips.
I got that one of those humble bundles. It is the most disturbing yet hilarious thing I've ever seen.
It is, but it truly, at its core, even though it's got a very raunchy title, it is about a relationship between two people that think that they're the only people in the world that are like this, and then they find somebody else that's like them, and they're like, "Oh my gosh!" Like, I didn't know that was possible.
Yeah,
and
those people are judging
the one.
And those people, they're judging them.
George, have you ever read Sex Criminals?
I have read the first trade paperback of Sex Criminals.
Ah.
Yeah, which is incredible because Zdarsky is like an incredible author these days. You know, like he's writing Batman right now. He's writing Daredevil right now. But the fact that he was slinging pencils on a book for Matt Fraction, who no slouch either, as far as writers go.
Right. So if you're a fan of Chip Zdarsky's new book, Public Domain, I think he does the art for that and the writing for that. So an opportunity for you to see Chip Zdarsky working with another writer. You can definitely tell that Chip had his hand in crafting this particular tale just based on his humor and so forth.
Yeah.
So great pick, J.A.
Yeah, not for the kids.
Not
caution that
kids.
one.
But Chad, what's your pick this week?
All right, so we're reading this book, and it's all about the ideals of things. And so I thought I would go all the way back to the platonic ideal of a hero that David Mazzucchelli has worked on before, and that is the ideal Daredevil. Now, this isn't even my favorite Daredevil, but if you ask people who is the ideal Daredevil writer and artist, you're going to come to the Frank Miller and Klaus Janson Daredevil run, which basically redefined the character, made him a ninja. Who saw that coming? Introduced Elektra. And so recently, at the end of January here, they re-released, because it's been out of print for a minute, the Frank Miller and Klaus Janson Daredevil Omnibus that features Daredevil 158 to 161, and then 163 to 191. So you get the whole Elektra saga in there. It also includes the What If and a couple of different interview pieces, all collected in one form. It does not contain the Miller Mazzucchelli Daredevil Born Again. There was a different omnibus, the Daredevil by Frank Miller omnibus, that has that story and some other, like the Spectacular Spider-Man issues and things like that. That one has yet to be reprinted, so that one is pretty pricey. This one, as of the time of recording, you can still find on discount from a couple of places, or you can find it at your local comic shop. But if you want to know what Daredevil is and the essence of Daredevil, read the Frank Miller Daredevil Omnibus.
There you go. George, what's your recommendation this week?
My recommendation is Essex County Trilogy by Jeff Lemire.
Hockey!
Hockey, Canada. I couldn't stop thinking about that book as I was reading this one. I think Asterios Polyp is all about, as we mentioned before, duality. I think Essex County Trilogy is all about patterns and repetition, because it's the story of this one family in Canada across several generations. And much like this book, written and drawn by the same person, and not that there aren't amazing collaborative teams out there, I think it is so fascinating to get a cohesive vision from a writer-artist. And Jeff Lemire has such a unique look where it's like literally just black inks and gray washing. Much like this book is for me now, like that feels like a book that is different every time you read it.
Pretty good pick, George.
Yeah, my favorite part of the Essex County is the boxing club story.
Oh, the backup, yeah.
Yeah, that's actually I do love that boxing club story.
We read that. Is that the one where there's at the end he had those sketches of all the different noses and things?
Oh yeah, over time.
Yeah.
Actually have that. If you ever want to listen to the Last Comic Shop's review of Essex County, make sure that you're checking that out in our archives. My recommendation this week is actually another in the long line of graphic novelizations of famous works. As you might know, on the Last Comic Shop, we've done this in the past, and I'm actually a big fan of this because like Classic Illustrated, if you have an opportunity to put pictures with words, sometimes it's more digestible, and you can actually enjoy some of these great literary treasures out there. And again, the visuals can kind of add to that. And so whether it was Slaughterhouse-5, which we did on this show, whether it was Dune House Atreides, whether it was 1984, another one in that great tradition is a graphic novel adaptation of Margaret Atwood's classic, The Handmaid's Tale, art and by Renee Nault. It is an absolutely gorgeous book. And again, I don't know if it tells the entire story of Offred in the world of Gilead as it is in the book, because I never read the book. But I can say this, that I got the complete story of her tale of being, assigned to one of the leaders of the party, all the things that happened to her in regards to. Long story short, you should know what The Handmaid's Tale is. I don't have to explain it on this show.
Just watch the show on Amazon.
Yeah, exactly. Watch that. Because as I was sitting there reading this, my wife looks over at me and goes, "Can I keep that after you're done with it?" And I was just like, yeah, you should read this. But it's wonderfully drawn, and the art is, and the use of color is fantastic. And I just got to say, if you've never read The Handmaid's Tale, this is a perfectly good version to check out. So yeah, kudos to Renee Nault for putting this graphic novel adaptation together.
You got a thing for red outfits? This is for you.
Absolutely. Any case, if you've got a thing for the Last Comic Shop, make sure that you're out there rate, reviewing, and subscribing at www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com. It's a terrific place where you can find all of our episodes, including some of the ones we've talked about on this week's show, like Essex County and Slaughterhouse-5 and 1984. And did we do a Daredevil book? We did a Daredevil book with George!
Yeah!
That's right. We did Brian Michael Bendis's Daredevil run.
Underboss.
Alex Maleev, yeah.
And Alex Maleev. They actually, I just picked up another book. It's on my read pile stack by the two of them, based on Mikey Wood, that Scarlet book.
Oh,
yeah.
Man, those books are good. I love that. I loved Pearl. I think it was Undercover. Was that like the David Mack Bendis book? People dog on Bendis, man. That dude still got his fastball. I don't want to hear it. Like, the guy still turns out really entertaining books.
Yeah. And if you need all kinds of awesome stuff to keep some of those great books in, make sure that you're getting out to bcwsupplies.com. It's a terrific place where you can find all those bags, boards, boxes, clamshells, and miscellaneous bric-a-brac that you might need for your collection to keep it looking nice. And if you want a little bit of a discount while you're getting those awesome comic book accessories, make sure you're using the code LCSPOD to get 10% off your order. Yes, that is LCSPOD over at bcwsupplies.com.
If you need to find us out there on the socials, you can find us at Last Comic Shop on Twitter, YouTube, all those other places where we are, in fact, being real. Don't know where to go or get confused or just want to head back to home base, you can always go back to www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com where you can find what else, J.A.?
We have a link to our merch store where starting this week, we've got our special St. Paddy's Day t-shirt drawn by the wonderful Mikey Wood, who is a often guest host and contributor on our show, colored by yours truly. You can find that at our merch store. I think it looks nice on a green heather.
Yes, it does. That's the default color, I believe.
I'm saving my money for the Last Comic Shop Bastille Day shirt. So I'm just going to pocket those dollars until July.
Hang in there, it's coming, and I bet it'll look great on a heather.
That's right.
And while we, along with great podcasts like Shortbox Summary, hope to be the last comic shop podcast that you need, we don't want to be the last comic shop. So we encourage everybody to get out there, try to find your copies of Asterios Polyp, go and try and find your copies of Sex Criminals, or Daredevil by Frank Miller and Klaus Janson, or Essex County by Jeff Lemire, or The Handmaid's Tale by that lady in the red suit, what's her name? Renee Nault. And support those shops, support the comic book field, and so you can get great art like we were talking about today.
Yes, and other great art is Shortbox Summary. George, tell them where they can find your show every week.
You can find my show on your preferred podcast platform of choice. Every Friday, you can find me on Twitter at PurpleBird616. This week, indie comic artist Richard Fairgray came on to talk about Batman Hush. And he also has a new graphic novel memoir called Octopus, a memoir of flailing, on Kickstarter, which I've backed. I'm very excited to hold that book in my hands. Richard is a very talented artist, very gifted writer. And we talk about 2002, man. We go back to Batman Hush, and it's a book. It's a book.
By Jeff Loeb with Jim Lee art.
Yeah.
It's actually one of the books that got me back into comic books. I got that in hardback, that like deluxe hardback copy. I remember reading it in the Boston airport and being like, "Oh, this is a Batman comic book nowadays." Okay, I could do this, I guess.
That was kind of where we landed. We're like, this isn't a very good Batman story, but if it's your first Batman story, it's the best first Batman story you could possibly read, because it's just a tour of everything Batman and Bat adjacent. But man, are there some potholes on that.
Do you think it would have been better had Jeff Loeb stuck with his traditional partner, Tim Sale? Because wasn't that supposed to be one of their books at one point?
It does feel like a more out of time Batman story, so I think that would have been an interesting take. I do love Jim Lee. I don't think that was the problem. Maybe just injecting it into mainstream DC-ness was the problem.
Yeah.
Well, because it's what Scott Williams is the inker who usually works with Jim Lee. Yeah, I mean, no one's bad at their job on this book. I just don't think it's the best Batman story.
Count your lucky stars, because the Batman run when I was in high school was the Azrael Batman Broken Back.
Nightfall was fun. Night Quest was a little rough.
Night Quest.
I think Nightfall rips. I think that's a really good book. I'm sorry.
Well, in any case, make sure that you're reviewing and subscribing out to Shortbox Summary, as well as The Last Comic Shop. We'll be here again next week with our review of Ant-Man. Yes, Ant-Man and Wasp Quantumania drops later this week, and we will be here with not only an Ant-Man book, but also a review of that movie. So stay tuned for that. Until then, I was the host with the most, Andy Larson. I was joined by J.A. and Chad Smith and George from Shortbox Summary. Thank you so much for stopping by the shop, George. Yay! And until next week, stay safe, stay geometrical, and remember that if you have a large bookcase and some of the books fall on your head, you have nobody to blame but your shelf.
No more cheese for you.
Okay. Y'all get out of here. It's time for John Mayer. My body is a wonderland.
Ooh, can we come?
No.
The Last Comic Shop was a 2023 Black Angus production.